Good morning. Thank you for attending and joining us for this webinar. Today we'll be discussing what a PCBU is, their obligations, defining what an officer is, and discussing or describing what due diligence may look like and how to apply it. Just a bit of a disclaimer, the information in this presentation is general in nature and should not be relied upon as individual advice. Where this is necessary, legal advice should be sought from a legal practitioner with expertise in work health and safety law. Although every effort has been made to ensure that the information in this presentation is complete, current and accurate, MTC does not guarantee it so, and it accepts no responsibility for any loss, damage or personal injury that may result from the material which is not complete, current or accurate. So let's look at the Work Health and Safety Act, primary duty of care that applies to a PCBU and some of the key provisions. Under the Model Work Health and Safety Act, the PCBU's primary duty of care is to ensure health and safety and well-being of employees and others in the workplace. These duties further extend to the control and management of workplaces, fixtures, fittings, or plants at these workplaces, the design, manufacture, import, or supply of plant substances or structures, and install, construct, and commission of plant or structures. Further key provisions extend to the provision of consultation, participation, and representation on work health and safety matters for workers, including issue resolution. And then to move further on, protection against discrimination for those who exercise, perform, or seek to exercise or perform powers, functions, or rights under the Act, duties of officers, workers, and other persons, officers to exercise due diligence to ensure compliance, and the duty to notify notifiable incidents to your regulator. What is duty of care? Duty of care is to ensure, so far as reasonably practicable, a safe working environment, consultation arrangements are in place, that there is safe plant structures and systems of work that include the safe use, handling, and storage of plant, structure, and substances, adequate facilities to support the welfare of workers, suitable and sufficient information, training, instruction, and supervision is available, and a means to monitor health of workers and the condition of the workplace. The PCBU is expected to be proactive in fulfilling this primary duty of care and cannot assume that another has taken care of this safety matter. This duty is shared by PCBUs in relation to the same matter. Let's dissect what consultation may look like in further detail. A PCBU must consult so far as reasonably practicable with workers who carry out work for the business or undertaking and are likely to be directly affected by work health and safety matters. Consultation, again, must be proactive and should be proportionate to the size of the business, the nature of the work, the urgency of the issue, the nature or otherwise severity of the hazard or risk, working arrangements, and characteristics of workers. PCBUs must consult, cooperate, and coordinate with other duty holders that have a duty over the same matter. What is a PCBU? Person conducts business or undertaking, whether the person conducts the undertaking alone or with others, or whether or not that business is conducted for profit or gain. This may be defined as owner-operators, industry associations such as the MTA, corporations, public and private companies, or agencies that operate under the Crown, as well as not-for-profit organizations. All of these can be defined as the PCBU. Let's have a look at what officers are defined as and the duties that apply to them or otherwise obligations. The Work Health and Safety Act adopts the definition of an officer from the Corporations Act. In thus, it can be defined as a director or secretary of the business, or a person who makes or participates in making decisions that affect whole or substantial parts of the business, or who has the capacity to affect significantly the corporation's financial standing. For the third point, we've broken it down into the following slide for a bit more ease. How do we define an officer in relation to participating in making decisions? A person may be considered an officer even though they do not make relative decisions or have the authority to do so, but if they participate in making those decisions. This means that a person can be considered an officer if that person is actively involved in the process in which those decisions are made and occupies a role that may directly contribute, promote, or affect decisions, or that person has an ongoing or repeated involvement in the process through which decisions are made. Decisions need not be directly related to work health and safety. Decisions may affect work health and safety indirectly through organizational structure, areas of the business it's involved in, and resources allocated to particular parts of the business. What is required of an officer? An officer, as far as reasonably practicable, needs to exercise due diligence to ensuring the PCBU is meeting their work health and safety duties. What is reasonably practicable will depend on particular circumstances, including the role and influence able to be exercised by that individual officer. Officers may meet their due diligence requirements in some respects by proper reliance on information and activities of others, while having a more direct involvement in work health and safety management and governance in other aspects. To the extent of which an officer will seek to rely on others, the officer must be able to demonstrate reasonableness of that reliance, which may be demonstrated through the receipt of credible information and advice from appropriate people. Let's look at what due diligence is. What does it mean? Due diligence relating to work health and safety, officers will need to show they have taken reasonable steps to acquire and update their knowledge of work health and safety matters, understand the operations being carried out by the PCBU in which they are employed, including any hazards and risks associated with that operation. Additionally, officers will need to show that they have taken reasonable steps to ensure the PCBU has and uses the appropriate resources and processes to eliminate or otherwise minimize work health and safety risks arising from the undertaking, has processes in place to receive and respond promptly to information regarding incidents, hazards, and risks, and processes in place for complying with the duties or otherwise obligations under the Act. This emphasizes the corporate governance responsibilities and officers and is critical to the achievement of positive safety outcomes. Below, we'll have some suggestions on how we can further demonstrate due diligence. It is important to note that anything relating to work health and safety issues and decisions needs to have proper records. We can demonstrate our due diligence through acquiring knowledge and accessing up-to-date information about work health and safety. This can be done through updating knowledge of the Work Health and Safety Act, regulations, and relevant approved codes of practice. Investigating current industry issues through conferences, seminars, and awareness sessions. Acquiring up-to-date knowledge of management principles and practices, and ensuring officers and workers have ready access to this information to help them avoid risks and hazards in the workplace. It is also important to note that work health and safety matters should be a priority consideration at senior level management meetings. We'll look at a few more components and how we can demonstrate this due diligence. Understanding the operations and associated risks as we discussed before, and this can be done through developing a plan that identifies hazards and risks within the core activities. Ensuring that appropriate resources and processes are used and in place to eliminate or otherwise minimize risks to health and safety. This can be done through establishing and maintaining safe methods of work, implement and continuously improve safety management systems, recruiting personnel with the appropriate skills, and ensuring staff levels are adequate for safety coordination. Giving safety personnel access to decision makers for urgent issues, and maintaining and upgrading plant, machinery, equipment, and infrastructure. Furthermore, we can look at implementing processes for receiving and considering information about incidents and hazards, and this could be done through a risk-based change management process, empowering workers to cease unsafe work and, where required, request better resources, establishing processes for timely consideration and response to information about instances, near-miss events, hazards, and risks, and measure safety against KPIs. Establishing and maintaining compliance processes. This can be done through audits or validation compliance against your safety management planning. What is reasonably practicable? As we understand, this jargon is used quite often within the work health and safety environment. Reasonably practicable is being able to provide evidence of a process involving consideration of at least the following components: the cost of eliminating or otherwise mitigating the hazard, the difficulty of implementing a measure to prevent or mitigate that hazard, consideration of incidents of accidents from that hazard, such as frequency or reoccurrence, consideration to the severity of risk, and consideration to the competence and experience of any contractors or third parties used. So, what happens when we get it wrong and we do not meet the above prerequisites? In this table, we have categorized offenses from 1 to 3, reckless to failure to comply with health and safety, and we've defined that against potential costs against corporation or otherwise the PCBU, officers and workers. As we can see there, from a category 3 to category 1 for a PCBU, these potential penalties can range from $500,000 up to $3 million. For officers, $100,000 to $600,000 with potential of 5 years imprisonment, and for workers, $50,000 to $300,000 with a 3-year potential of imprisonment. Thank you so much for attending our webinar. Please take some time to scan the QR code and provide us some feedback in a survey. We'll take some time now to answer any questions that may be raised.